All right. Welcome back into the podcast. And I am super excited for this episode today. Today, I got on my guys, Drew Comer and Marty Hannon are with me today. Drew, it's your birthday. We are
Yeah,
recording this on your
Yeah.
birthday,
I
and
know it.
I am super excited for this. We have baseball coming to us. It is the MLB playoffs. I told you guys I'd be getting them back on when the MLB playoffs came, and they are here. So we got to get into it. But before we start, there was some news that came out about Trevor Bauer that Marty and Drew wanted to discuss. So Marty, fill us in on what's going on with Trevor Bauer and what it means for baseball.
Okay. So, as a lot of you know or don't know, Trevor Bauer was involved in a sexual assault investigation that really derailed his career in the MLB because he was never convicted. However, he was suspended from the from the MLB for 2 years. And today, I think as of yesterday or today, the all legal proceedings ended, and he won. So he's from what I know innocent in the eyes of the law, and is now free to talk about everything. And he released a video that I saw on Instagram, and I believe it's on Twitter as well. That he explaining everything that happened and his side of the story that was never like fully came out, and it was really interesting because like from the way it looks, my understanding prior to the video that came out today was that Bauer was doing some weird stuff, but like was probably not convicted, like probably not guilty of a crime. But from what was said today, it sounds like he was like pretty much completely blackballed. So uh, I think as far as I think he'll be on an MLB team next year. I think there's a good chance because he's a proven arm. He almost won a Cy Young not too long ago. He did have some struggles in Japan, but I think he's gonna come in with a huge chip on his shoulder, something to prove to the league, to fans, really to even himself. So I'm curious to see where that goes and where he ends up. It's pretty much
Yeah,
all that there is.
I think in terms of going forward, like you said, he's got a good arm. He's got a personality. I mean, we saw it when he was in the major leagues.
Yeah,
Before he got suspended. But if he joins a contender, he can be a 3-4 arm in that rotation, and he's like you said has a solid arm, and we'll see what happens going forward.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, part of the reason why I kind of wanted to discuss it on the podcast is like, I have talked about like these issues in the past on the podcast, and I feel like it's important to bring up the issues. We've seen it in almost every sport I've covered, like Deshaun Watson with the NFL, Mel Tucker now with that situation. Like, it's just stuff you got to talk about. So I appreciate you guys giving your insight there. But let's get into some fun stuff. Okay, we got the playoffs going on, and I'm super pumped for it. But Miguel Cabrera just played his last game, so we got to, as Tigers fans, talk about it a little bit. Drew, what was your reaction to the last game? And like I thought overall the fan service was unbelievable, and like it was so cool what the Tigers did for him. But talk to me about your reaction to his last game. And I mean, it's just sad to see Cabrera go, man.
I know it feels like yesterday when he just signed that long extension. And I will say the league did one thing this year, and it was unintentional, but Major League Baseball made it so every team plays every team. And so Miggy kind of got to go through his little farewell tour, playing each team. And, besides the athletics, each team got him like a really cool gift. And then, going in this last game, Marty and I and most Tigers fans, and it's emotional, because he was kind of our childhood player. Going and seeing him go out when he's healthy and having that Triple Crown year, winning MVP, and just trading for him and him kind of leading us to that World Series in 2012. It was kind of hard to watch, but he's sticking around the organization. I think he's got an assistant role of some sort. So we'll be seeing him around, and it's hard to watch a childhood player that you've been watching forever just retire. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean it's sad for sure, and I feel like it was a day like we all knew it was coming soon, and I mean honestly, as fans, like, in somewhat I guess wanted is just because how Miggy's like been kind of like a big money strand for like what is becoming a more than just a rebuilding team now, but man, I'll tell you one thing, watching that, like, I couldn't believe it was his last game. It's gonna be hard to adjust watching Tiger baseball without Miguel Cabrera in the lineup. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I love Miggy. He did so much for the city. He did so much for like the organization. Obviously, like part of those teams that sadly never won, but were extremely successful in our childhood. And he did a lot for younger players too. Like you'll hear JD Martinez talk about like the effect Miggy had on him, and just so many cool stories that like Miguel Cabrera has to offer through his time in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. And
True legend.
he'll go down as an all-time Tiger great, the best I've seen in my
Yeah,
lifetime for sure. And
one of the
I'm
best
sure,
right-handed hitters of all time.
yeah, that Triple Crown year, who knows the next time we'll see that. I mean, Aaron Judge, was trying for it last year and came a little short, but just that feat alone in his career with Detroit, and then obviously he battled some injuries later in his career, but him sticking around, and the contract was a little bit of a burden, but at this point, contract doesn't really matter. It's kind
Yeah,
of just
he
like,
earned it.
oh yeah, he
More
definitely,
than earned it.
yeah, right. And so, just being able to go to all the games and watch him, and knowing that you're not gonna be able to watch him again is obviously a tough thing for baseball fans for sure. But it's part of the game. I mean, we see it every year with most years we got Hall of Famers coming out. Obviously Miggy's a shoe-in Hall of Famer, and then there's guys like Greinke and Wainwright, and Joey Votto that are considering retiring as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and Greinke and Votto could be two potential Hall of Famers too that
yeah,
would
right,
retire.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
no one even close to the icon that Miggy is.
100%. 100%. Like, growing up a Tigers fan, like, he was the guy. I mean, he just was. And, it's sad to see him go. And I just wanted to, you know, give him his props because he definitely deserves his props. I mean, the dude, like you guys talked about his Triple Crown year, he almost won it again the next year. Like, he was close. It was an insane year the next year. So, I mean, this guy was unbelievable. He's not just a Tigers great, he's an MLB great. So, it's kind of sad to see him go, but hopefully we'll see some better years from the Tigers in the future. But
Yeah.
let's get into some playoff baseball. So we're going to start in the American League. We're going to start with the wild card matchups, which they keep switching up the playoff how they format it on me, and I get confused. But I think I got it now. It's going to be best of 3 in the wild card, and the first matchup I want to talk about is the. Let's start with the Rangers and the Rays. I want to discuss that one. I think that's a very interesting matchup. So I'm going to start with Marty here. Marty, what sticks out to you about this matchup here?
Okay, so Rangers are coming in, I think, with some stunted momentum. They were they had a huge trade deadline that kind of is going a little is hurting now. Like Evaldi got hurt after it. He was already on the team, but he dealing with injuries. Scherzer still isn't ready to come back yet. So the Rangers, and then I mean, they were supposed to, not supposed to, but they were leading the division for every day in the last week, pretty much. And then on the last day, they lost. They're tied with the Astros as far as games back, but they lost the tiebreaker. So they have to go through the wild card. So, and not to mention too, it's at Tropicana, which I think is a huge advantage for the Rays because nobody likes to play at the Trop. So I was pretty high on the Rangers when they were coming out of the deadline, but just some injuries and stuff have derailed them. and I was not as high on the Rays, but I think this. So game one, it's Glasnow versus Montgomery on the mound. I give the advantage to Glasnow. I think his type of pitcher tends to do very well in the postseason. He was good in the postseason. When the Rays had made it in the past before he got hurt. So I think that like right now matchup fares in the Rays' favor. And if I had to pick a winner for that series, I'd pick the Rays.
Okay. Moving over, Drew, I wanted to ask you, what key players do you think we should look out for in this series? I mean, being like kind of into baseball, but not like truly into the players aspect. Like, I want to know some of the players, because both of these teams, the last time we talked about them like they were hot at stages. And I mean, the Rays won like a lot of games this year. People were high on them. I was high on them. I had them in my World Series. So talk to me about like some of the players that you're looking out for in this series.
Yeah, so just to start, like Marty touched on, obviously Scherzer getting, hurt down the stretch was a huge loss, because that's, he's got postseason talent. But the two names that I'm looking at, two of them are from the Rangers, and then, two from the Rays are Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. In that middle infield. They were the big signings that the Rangers had, and the Rangers had struggled with pitching the last couple of years, and they kind of figured it out. And obviously Eovaldi and Scherzer getting hurt, doesn't help, but I think that's still, a well put together team. But yeah, Semien and Seager in that middle infield, they have one of the best middle infields in the game. Semien had a great year, and Corey Seager has a big bat as well. And then on the Rays side, we saw it a couple years ago with Randy Arozarena. He was kind of the big name postseason player. He was definitely the best bat back in that World Series run in 2020 against the Dodgers. And then Tyler Glasnow is just their ace. I mean, they're going to ride or die from him because, obviously the Rays have dealt with some injuries as well. And so I think last time when we talked at the trade deadline, they were pretty beat up. But I think they kind of persevered their way through. They pulled out a 99-win season. And, so those are some of the bigger names that I'm looking at. But, when it comes to playoffs, you got to rely on your big stars. And, whether it's baseball or any sport, you kind of, you go with your big guys. And so those are their big signings. And so that's who I'm going to be following.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Something about Glasnow. I'm just looking. He has like shaky like career statistics, but there are games where he's been good. So we in the postseason, that is. But I think he's going to come in with something to prove. And I think the Rays are going to win that series.
Drew, who do you have out of this one?
So I'm actually going to go with the Rangers. The Rangers were my pick at the deadline to make the World Series. I don't think they're going to make the World Series, but I still think that that they're going to pull this series out as the underdog.
Okay. I like it. All right. Let's move into the other ones then. We got Twins and the Blue Jays. So I'll start with Drew here. Drew, talk to me a little bit about this series. All I heard this whole year was how the AL Central sucked. Yeah. So, I mean, the Twins, like, not impressive to me too much. And we were talking a little bit off camera, like, this matchup just isn't great. I mean, we were talking about the Astros road, and we'll get to that stuff later. But talk to me a little bit about what you see out of this matchup and just a little bit about the Twins and the Blue Jays.
Yeah, so it's funny how baseball works, because the Twins are a 3 seed because they won the division. But they ended the year with 87 wins. And the Blue Jays were third in their division, and they ended with 89 wins. And so, it's kind of one of those things where they're two evenly matched teams, and one kind of ended out like if the Blue Jays were in the Central, they would have won the Central. But, that's just kind of how the standings work. And I think overall, the Blue Jays are a more complete team. They're more offense oriented. And so they have the big bats in that lineup that, who are younger guys and who I still would love to see, gain that postseason experience. And so, the shifting with the wild card round, I think that this kind of gives them a chance to, to pull out. They need 2 wins in this series to move on. And obviously that next series, if they were to win against the Astros, would be a tough one because the Astros are always, a tough postseason matchup. But overall, I think the Blue Jays are just the more complete team. Watching the Twins all year, if you win the division, you don't even have 90 wins, then, I don't know how sold I am on that. And Marty, I'm sure you agree.
Yeah. I watched a lot of Tiger baseball this year, which means a lot. I watched a good amount of Minnesota Twins baseball, and I was never impressed. To be completely honest with you, never thought that we as a team, I thought there was games where we were better, depending on who was on the mound. And I'm Drew. I'm with you. I think the Blue Jays are a more complete team. However, it is a 3-game series, which means you got to win 2 games. So the Twins have Sonny Gray and Bailey Over, 2 pitchers that I like. Over, he doesn't seem to have overpowering stuff. I watched him live when I actually was at Comerica, and in that game, Tigers crushed him. But I watched him a few other times throughout the year, and he was very good. So after not being impressed, I was, and something I was talking to one of my friends about, Kevin Wright. He was saying that we were just talking about him. I'm like, man, I don't totally see what makes him good. I didn't really think his stuff was that great. He throws, gets up to I think 93, 94, but his extension on his just from his wingspan and stuff gets him to where it looks like it's 95, 96. So that, and I'm a big believer in power pitching in the postseason. So I think that'll help. But he's also just proven to be pretty solid. And the Blue Jays have proven to be an offensive powerhouse at times, but also extremely shaky. So I think this one could go either way. And I'm actually my dark horse. I'll take the Twins in this matchup.
Okay. I like it. I mean, I'm sure this is I think we're much more interested in the Rangers-Rays than this one, for sure. Yeah. I mean,
because to be honest, I don't see either of these teams beating Houston.
Yeah, which is fair. I mean, and we'll get into Houston and Baltimore a little bit later, but we're actually going to take a little quick break, and then we're going to switch over to the NL and get to some predictions. So we'll be back in a sec.
Hello. This is Giovanni Mosheri. You might have heard me a couple times on Jake's Takes. I am the sports media director of Oakland University's campus radio station, WXOU, and I've been the host for about 2 years of a weekly sports show called The Jomo Show, where we cover all of Oakland University athletics, including a weekly update on scores and highlights, as well as interviews with athletes or those otherwise involved in athletics. You can listen to The Jomo Show live on WXOU Thursdays at 6, or you can tune in to me afterwards on Spotify. It's The Jomo Show.
All right, welcome back into the show, and we are going to switch over to the NL wildcard game. So we're going to start with the Phillies and the Marlins. So, Marty, I'm going to start with you here. I want to hear some key players out of this series because I remember us talking a year ago, and we all picked second teams that were going to be our favorite teams in each sport, and I picked the Phillies as one of mine. So personally for me, I'm rooting for the Phillies. I love them, and I want to hear if you think they have a legitimate shot first against the Marlins, and then we'll get into future stuff later.
For sure. Yeah, I do. I think that the Phillies are getting hot at the right time again. I think that there's key players, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. List goes on and on, man. JT Realmuto. I mean, I think this is a really well-built team that battled through a lot of adversity this year. Trey Turner came in. He struggled, man, after the World Baseball Classic. Then they showed the fans still supported him. And he started playing. He completely turned the season around. Bryce Harper came off of Tommy John and is now – he's playing in the field again. He's hitting really, really well. Had a great year. Kyle Schwarber's average kind of sucked, but he still had 47 home runs. Like, it's kind of who he is. And plus, in all of those guys that I just mentioned, hitter like Harper, Turner, Schwarber, Remuto as well, love big games.
Yes, sir.
Phenomenal when you need him the most. So, I mean, like, look at what Harper did in the postseason last year. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Astros team from last year is one of the best teams we'd seen in a really, really long time, and the Phillies put up a pretty valiant fight against them. Look at what Trey Turner did in the World Baseball Classic. I know that's not the MLB, but that's still extremely high level, high pressure baseball. Kyle Schwarber is has always been a key component. He came off of a season where he played like 2 games in a torn ACL. And Drew, I know you're a big Cubs fan. Like, he was integral in that World Series when he hit.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think, and Remuto is known for some big hits too. And I think now they're pitching with Nola, Wheeler. I think those two frontlining, they've been here before, and I don't think they're going to shy away from the situation. And like, Nola didn't have a very good year this year, and even Wheeler's was like fine, but you see a lot of guys that just get hot at the right time, and I think that's what the Phillies are going to do. Michael Lorenzen, who was a Tiger and switched over, he's a winner. He's going to want to win. He's going to be playing with the chip on his shoulders. He always does. So that's my key components for the Phillies. I think they're going to beat the Marlins. I think they're better. I think the Marlins have good players. Luis Arraez is very good. Led the league in average, but I don't think his skill set is gonna outdo what some like the power guys do for the Phillies. A big piece, because again, think about this: winning one game in these series is huge. Winning game 1, it's not easy to win 2 games in a row. The pitching matchup is Wheeler versus Luzardo. So for game 1, I give advantage Wheeler personally. I think Luzardo's fine, but the point I'm getting to is that Sandy Alcantara is huge in this series. He's had a rough year, but we know what he can do, and if I'm looking through the probable. Yeah, he's hurt. So he's not playing. So yeah. Yeah, I give this Phillies. I think they'll win both games because it's Wheeler, Nola versus Luzardo and Garrett, and I don't see the Marlins coming out on top.
Yeah,
fair.
I mean, I completely agree. I mean, every player you just listed, and being a Cubs fan, it hurts a little bit because they had it down the stretch, and then the Marlins and Diamondbacks just took over. That NL wildcard race, and the Phillies have been on top of that wildcard race the whole time. They play in that. The NL East is a tough division with the Braves, and they had a really good year, and so I think it's a 3-game series. Anything can happen, but I don't see any way that the Marlins come out of this series on top. Especially Alcantara was their Cy Young winner, and he didn't. I mean, he had a good year. He's a good pitcher. He gives them a lot of innings, but him being hurt right now, just doesn't give them that 1-2 punch that the Phillies have, and so I think that the Phillies are winning this game in 2 games. I don't even think it's going to go game 3. I think Wheeler's a really good pitcher. I think that Phillies offense is, has so much power and experience being in the World Series before, from being a wild card team in similar situation as this year. I think the Phillies are coming on, out on top for sure.
Yeah, and I'm reading. It doesn't seem like there's any chance like Alcantara would make a appearance. So, because sometimes guys are hurt and then they try to power through now, but
right,
yeah. I mean, that's good news for me, I guess. I mean, I like the Phillies. We'll take that. But let's move into the other series. We got Brewers as the 3 seed, and they are playing the Arizona Diamondbacks. So, Drew, you were talking about the Diamondbacks' little run to get into the wild card race. So, talk to me a little bit about what we should know about the Diamondbacks and how it kind of plays for this series?
Yeah, so kind of like I mentioned, the Diamondbacks had some crucial series towards the end of the year, including a couple against the Cubs, and I think they took 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7, and because they were behind in that race, they weren't even in those top three teams for a while, and we saw them have such a hot start to the year, and most people knew they were going to cool off, but just them being in the playoffs, I feel good for them because it's been a while since they've seen success, really. Kind of reminds me of, the Phillies a little bit. I know they had a good stretch earlier in the 2011, I think it was. But I just, looking at this matchup, I think the Brewers are going to come out on top just because they have, I think a 3-game series having that 1-2 punch is huge. And they have Burns going game 1. They haven't announced the game 2 starters yet, but I think that the Brewers, are just like, have experience as well. They've been in the playoffs, and Yelich, he struggled a little bit. He had a better year this year for sure. And the Diamondbacks just, I don't think they're there yet. But like I said, I think that it's a 3-game series. Anything can happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if this went either way. So
Yeah,
For sure.
I agree with that. I think there's some guys on the Diamondbacks that are really, really good, especially like Corbin Carroll and uh, Ketel Marte is also very good. But I see. I don't know. I have a hard time seeing them getting past Burns and Blake and I, but the 1-2 punch that the Brewers have. I will say though, to counter that point, that Zach Gallen could throw a gem, but he fizzled a little throughout the stretch. I will say the National League pitching in this upcoming postseason isn't like, I don't think it is not as powerhouse as the American League is, but or it has been in the past, mainly because the guy like I think Snell's probably gonna win Cy Young. He's not in. It's the biggest thing, but we'll see what guys like Gallen, and then as we get to guys like Strider and stuff, like what they'll do. So I guess like we'll all know in due time, but I think I'm gonna agree with you on this one, Drew. I think the Brewers are gonna come out on top.
Like it. So let's move into. I just kind of want to touch on the 1-2 seeds because we can kind of go through them and what you guys like about them. So out of these 1 and 2 seeds, I'm going to start with Marty here. Marty, I mean, we've talked about the Braves a lot on this podcast, but
Yeah.
I mean, out of the rest of these guys, which is Orioles, Dodgers, and Astros, who do you like the most?
Everybody would expect me to say the Astros. However, I like the Dodgers the most.
Okay.
But here's the caveat to this. They have to play to get to the World Series. They have to go through the Braves or a team that beat the Braves. So that will be an extremely tall task. That being said, I think that the Dodgers, I think they're not quite as good, but because I think simply because like the Braves have been doing what they're doing, like how hot they've been, that the Dodgers season's actually been a little bit underrated. They, I believe, won 100 games this year. They're not in an easy division either. I saw this thing, Drew. I actually think you might have sent it to me. Every single 1-run game was flipped. The San Diego Padres would have been in the playoffs had every 1-run game be flipped.
Wow.
So they're a team that they didn't produce results this year, but they're always playing in competitive baseball games. So Dodgers had to go they had to consistently go through Diamondbacks, Padres, and then San Fran was just kind of a rivalry, which can make it tough.
Mm-hmm.
And they were solid for a good portion of the year too. And the Rockies suck, but I think there that was a hard path to 100 wins for them. They have a lot of experience as well, and similar to what I kind of mentioned with the Phillies, like a lot of guys who like making impacts in big time situations. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Will Smith is I think one of the most underrated players in the game. And then on the pitching side, obviously Clayton Kershaw, right? Who is like known for being not great in the postseason, but he's still won a World Series. He's had success in the postseason, just like sometimes like the bar is set so high with what you do in the regular season. But I really, really like the Dodgers, and I think that if they find a way to get through the National League side, I think they will win the World Series. And then the American League side, I still like the Astros a little bit better than the Orioles. A little biased because Verlander's my favorite player. I like how I talked about earlier, how Texas's momentum's down. Theirs is high. They were second place, fighting for their playoff life, not even just winning the division. As it came down to it, they had two huge performances actually this week by Verlander, who won Player of the Week. Their offense is starting to really come together. Altuve with another great year. Alvarez. Those guys were hurt throughout the course of the year. Now they're healthy. So they're back. They're healthy. And they just find ways to be even better in the postseason. So I still like them, and I think that the inexperience that the Orioles have is going to end up hurting them. And a harder route.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Astros have probably the easiest route to the ALCS.
Yeah,
this year.
Yeah. So Drew, I wanted to, instead of going through contenders, I wanted to ask you this, and this is kind of putting you on the spot, but I think you'll be able to manage. But if you had to pick two teams that are dark horses to make a run in this playoffs, and this could be AL or NL, wherever you want to spin it, who would you pick?
So right off the bat,
okay,
Philadelphia. We talked about them.
Yep.
I think that they're set up perfectly. I mean, the NL is Marty touched on it. NL is really tough to get to that World Series because you're going to have to pass a couple teams. And not only do the Phillies have to make it past that first series against the Marlins, which, like I said, I think they will.
Yeah.
But then you got to go into, you got to play the Braves, and then you got to play the winner of the Dodgers. But in terms of dark horse, we've seen the Phillies do it before. I mean, they were a wild card team, and they made it to the World Series and pushed, 6-7 games on the Astros. And so I think that 100% out of the NL, that's my dark horse team. I think my other dark horse team is the Rangers. I still like the Rangers.
Okay.
I know they're beat up a little bit, but I think they have talent on that team. And I think that talent can take you a lot of places. I think that their pitching is really going to need to help them out, especially, without Scherzer right now. But I like the Rays. But I think the Rangers, out of the AL, going to play Baltimore. Baltimore's inexperienced, like Marty said, and then you never know what's going to come out, on that top half of the bracket with the Astros. So I think that those two are my two dark horse teams, both wildcard teams. I think that the Orioles are going to have, a phenomenal series, and I think the Astros will as well. I think every bye team right now has a really good chance at obviously making the World Series, but from the wild card round, I'd say those two are my dark horse teams.
For sure. Before we get into predictions, one team kind of two teams we didn't really talk about were the 1 seeds, and that's the Orioles and the Braves. I want to touch on the Orioles just a little bit, and I'll start with Drew here for this one. Drew, what are your thoughts on the Orioles? And you were just talking about it a little bit, how you think the Rangers can be a dark horse, and they would end up, if they were to beat the Rays, they'd end up playing the Orioles. So talk to me a little bit about what you think of the Orioles, and then Marty, you can kind of piggyback off of what he's saying.
Yeah, so like we touched on, I think they had over 100 wins this year, which is obviously phenomenal, and they're really young. So that's the only thing that's hurting them right now, I feel like, is their inexperience. They have good pitching. Kyle Gibson, we've seen him have some good years. And then in terms of their hitting, I mean, their young guys are just phenomenal. And I think that they definitely have a good shot. They're the 1 seed, and no one expected that going into this year, obviously, because the Orioles really haven't had a good track record the past couple of years, with success. And so it kind of came out of nowhere, but their prospects, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, just 2 out of the many that they've had, are phenomenal. Santander has been great. And so I think that these young guys are going to, have to figure it out in this first round that they play, whether they end up playing the Rangers or the Rays. I think that's going to be a great series, but I think the inexperience is the only thing that's, riding against them right now. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree. And when I look too at their team, I don't love their pitching. I agree. I think like Gibson's good. 4.73 ERA. It's not ideal. I thought they should have made a bigger splash at the deadline for some pitching. But that being said, they still found a way to win 101 games. So I mean, you can't deny that. But I think, Drew, I agree. I think the inexperience is what's going to hurt them. And we see a lot of good teams. That hurts. Doesn't help. I mean, obviously. So,
yeah, I mean, even if they win that first series, you're gonna have to go up. If the Astros win their series, you're gonna have to go up against a ton of guys with experience, and I think experience goes a long way. And this is an Orioles team that I could definitely see, with their farm system having all those great prospects, I could see them, producing in the next couple of years. Kind of like what we saw out of the Phillies. JT Realmuto was one of their top guys, and he's a great catcher, and they've had some good, trades getting Harper and Schwarber. But I think that this team is just a little too young right now. But I don't want to take anything away from them. They had a great year, fun to watch. They beat up on a lot of good teams in a really stacked division.
yeah,
I mean, that division, that AL East division is notorious for, the Yankees, Red Sox coming out on top. And we talked about the Blue Jays, but this is a deep division, and to see the Yankees miss, and obviously they didn't have a good year, but the Yankees were outside that wild card race by a good amount, but they were they had a good end of the stretch down the season, and then obviously the Rays are fabulous too. So they not only did they have a great year, it's kind of like the NL West a little bit, where the division is just kind of stacked and they still really thrived. So
Yeah, for sure. We can kind of get into predictions now. I mean, I think you guys really touched on each team. We didn't talk about the Braves as much, but I have a feeling you guys will talk about them in your predictions, because I think we all picked the Braves when we did the deadline podcast. So I'm going to start with you, Marty. Has anything changed in your predictions? And I want to, just so everybody knows how the predictions work on Jake's Takes, we make predictions either mid-season or at the beginning of the season. And my football predictions, as you guys might know, have been awful, like so bad. So you might not want to trust me when it comes to predictions, but I like trying to keep a tally of all the predictions we have during the year. So Marty, has your prediction changed from the deadline at all, or no?
I am going to say no.
Okay.
Actually, I like it even a little bit better now. I was starting to not like the Astros as much because it was really weird. They would go, they'd beat up on like the Rangers, and then they go lose to the Royals. So
yeah,
I was like, I didn't really know what to think of that, but I think they just had a huge week, winning the division, getting the bye. Verlander had 2 of his best starts of the year coming in, and I know I talk about him all the time, but he's vital for this because Valdez and Javier have not been as good as they could be. So I think they're going to be riding a lot on Verlander, and we'll see how that goes as he's, no spring chicken. But I think that overall they're the most talented. I think they had a little bit of World Series hangover this year, and I think they had some injuries that derailed certain parts of the season. But I think they're exactly where they want to be, and I think they've been there before, and they've proven that they can do it. So I think they're the most proven team. I think they're going to make the World Series out of the AL. And the NL, again, the Braves. I mean, my God. Like, just ridiculous what they've been doing. Also, one of my professors said she's going to cut class if the Braves make the World Series because she's a big fan.
Ooh.
So that's kind of a big thing. It's my 8:30 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that'd be ideal.
Take that.
That has nothing to do with my prediction, though. I mean, Acuna, first 40-70 ever. So I know the bases are bigger, but that counts for something.
Mhm.
Olsen, I mean, there's a time when he had more home runs and the Braves had losses. And then, like, those are just two. I mean, Riley, Albies, Strider, all these guys are just big impact names that would be, I mean, frontlining any team. And they're like Michael Harrison, another one who was like the one kind of like, I guess, dark spot in the Braves year, and he's turned it around. I think they're the most complete team, and I think I'm going to stick with the Braves in 6 against the Astros.
Cool. All right, Drew.
Yeah,
Prediction,
so
has it changed at all? And remember, if you change your prediction, it doesn't count. That's my rule for
yeah.
it.
Well,
So-
I'll keep mine then
All
because
right.
I had the Rangers and Braves,
Okay.
and it's Rangers. We've talked about them. They're a little beat up right now, but I still think they can come out. They got a tough path, but I don't think the Orioles are, like we just talked about. I don't think the Orioles are gonna do much. I think they're gonna make that a great series. But if the Rangers can get past the Rays, I think anything is possible for sure. And then Marty touched on the Braves a little bit, and it's incredible. I mean, I'm looking at their home run line, and Matt Olson, 54 home runs, and then they have behind that Acuna with 41, Ozuna with 40, Austin Riley with 37, and Ozzie Albies with 33. I don't think I've seen that in my lifetime from one team.
It's not like these guys are batting 225 with this either.
No.
I mean, Acuna's batting like 330.
Yeah.
Or batted, I guess, season's over. I think Olsen finished like 270s.
So, yeah,
I mean,
something like
whatever,
that.
right? Like whatever it is.
Yeah, and then that MVP race. I mean, Acuna is obviously the front runner, but you got Matt Olson is up there, and then you got two guys from the Dodgers, Betts and Freeman, had phenomenal seasons too, and so I'm really interested to see what's going to happen out of the NL. But the Braves, definitely going to stick with them. I can't pick against that because not only is their hitting doing really well, Spencer Strider's that the front name in that rotation, and my goodness, every time I watch him, he's just seems better and better.
He's really
he throws hard, he strikes people out, and I'm curious
Power
to see
pitching.
Yeah.
Gets you places.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And if he can stay healthy, I think this Braves team is going to be good for a long time. So I'll stick with my two picks. Out of the AL, it's going to be a little tougher. Obviously the Astros, getting that 2 seed and the bye is huge for them. So I think Marty's pick is valid as well, but we'll kind of see what happens out of that AL side.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with it too. I had the Rays playing the Braves, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I kind of wanted to structure this podcast where we weren't talking about the Braves as much, but we went through every other team, and there's just no way that the way you guys talked about the Braves, it's like you guys lit up because of how good they're playing. And I mean, Marty, Andrew, like you guys listed the numbers. It's clear that they're the best team. It's clear. And
It's
again,
clear.
it's very like the NL is difficult because they might have to go against a hot Philly, who is one of Drew's dark horses. Then, Marty, you talked about the Dodgers, how unbelievable they're playing. They might be the second best team in baseball right now. Like
I think they are.
Yeah, that's a difficult matchup in the NLCS. And then maybe waiting for them is like either a great Astros team or somebody in the AL that's just gotten done winning 2 or 3 series. Like, that's a difficult road. But, I think it's going to be a true test for the Braves, and it's definitely going to be fun to watch. I'm definitely going to be watching this MLB playoffs. I'm kind of excited for this. I don't normally get excited for the MLB playoffs, but the Braves are a fun team to watch, and I'm also interested to see what the Phillies are going to do. So I'm kind of pumped for this. So, I mean, this is
And that's
exciting.
the beauty, right? It's baseball. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we'll see.
Oh, another thing we didn't really talk about that I'll just touch on quickly is a lot of times you look at rotations during the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, having a good bullpen is huge.
Huge.
I think that
Huge.
the Braves and the Dodgers and a couple other teams there have amazing bullpens. The Astros have had good bullpen the last couple of years, and you've seen that kind of lead to their success a little bit. And I think
Orioles have a good bullpen.
Orioles do have a good bullpen. I think that's a very underrated factor when it comes to playoffs because you can throw Justin Verlander out there for 7 innings. It can be a 2-1 ball game. But if you don't have a good bullpen,
Right.
it can be tough to win games. And so I think that's just another reason that some of these teams that we've touched on are just going to go a long way. So
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, guys, this was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. First full year covering baseball, and we did a pretty dang good job, I'll say. So MLB playoffs start Tuesday night, so tomorrow night. The podcast will be out in the morning, so please go listen to that. Marty and Drew, thank you so much for joining the podcast. This was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us.
absolutely.
Happy birthday, Drew.
Thank you.
Drew, birthday boy, Drew.
Yep.
We got the podcast in. So this was a lot of fun, and we are going to be out of here. I'll see you guys later. Peace.
Yeah, later.